then you enjoy. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Friends in Need, written by IAreGoodAtRighting. I was only a hatchling when the black ships descended from the sky. At the time, I had no idea what was happening, being that young. To be fair, none of us really did. I don't remember my parents, or losing them for that matter. Maybe that's for the best. Neither do I recall the heavy footprints of the black ship's inhabitants above the claustrophobic crawl space where I was hidden, nor the scavengers digging me out of a smoking ruin that was my home. They brought me into their flock and took me as their own. To be honest, it was more of a band of desperate refugees than a true flock. We fled the invaders and their black ships, adults taking turns carrying me. Months passed as we traveled through raised landscapes and past jagged husks of cities, finding a stray survivor to join the flock here and there. More often than not, we only discovered a sad aftermath the invaders left behind. On unlucky days, a black ship would stumble upon the flock, hunting us down like mindless drones programmed to kill. I was too young to remember what they looked like, but the rare occasion they mentioned conjure up images of terror. My earliest memories was being carried into some vast underground tunnel, reaching over someone's shoulder towards the shrinking light of the exit. The smartest flock around the world realized living on the surface was impossible. Optimists said the invaders weren't here to stay, that they would just take what they needed and leave one day. That wasn't the case. We found caves, chasms, and grottos hidden in the far corners of the world. Without looking back, we dug in. Days turned into years, and we went on. I molted my first feathers and entered adulthood. Life in the tunnels became routine, as much as people said that it was all temporary. Leaders were elected, living spaces were carved out of rock, occupants were assigned, and so on. Once we even sent out an expedition to find out what was happening on the surface, and if more of us were out there. Future missions were cancelled after the first group never came back. Animosity towards the invaders only grew as time passed. I despised the black ships and what they did to us. But my discontent was nothing compared to the pure hatred the rest of the flock held for them. While I was tending the crops under the sun lamps, the other, older survivors never stopped talking about what it felt like to fly through the air. Wind on your wings, sun on your back. Some other times, they would aimlessly question why the black ships came to our planet or why they were targeting us, each time spitting and cursing at the invaders. Every once in a while, they direct their anger towards me, demanding why I wasn't more upset at losing everything. But they didn't understand. What did I lose? I don't remember the surface, the thriving cities, the lush forests that they sing about. The dark caves were all I ever knew. I never even learned how to fly. One day, the flock went into a panic. A boom from somewhere, and the tunnels quaked and moaned in response. The tunnels settled back into their foundations after a few more moments. In an attempt to calm the survivors in the tunnel, the leaders dismissed the incident as a simple earthquake. That theory went down the drain when the booming continued into the night. Leaders gathered in secret and left the rest of the flock to stir and speculate over the sounds. The more paranoid members said the black ships had discovered the tunnels and were here to bury us. Some others nodded in assent, while most belligerent demanded we storm out with guns and drive them off by force. The leaders emerged from the den and announced their decision. The flock was to stay inside the tunnels until the booming stopped. Days came and went, the rumbling never quite coming to an end. Each time it happened, all of us hunkered down, expecting the tunnels to become our tombs. Once in a while, hours of silence would come to pass. Everyone thought that it was the last of it, until another crash would shatter our hopes. Whatever was going on had the flock rattled. The new routine was to stare at the stalactites on the ceiling, expecting them to fall down on our heads. Boredom filled the gaps between the booms. It gave us time to think, and that time allowed us to assume the worst. Whatever was causing the disturbance, it wasn't good. I'd never seen morale sink so low. People were coming to terms with their own mortality and finding peace with their deities. When all seemed to be lost, the crashing stopped. One moment the walls shook, then they didn't. 4 days passed without even a tremor. The leaders convened again, this time joining in a chaotic debate with the rest of the flock. Half the crowd wanted to investigate the surface, while the rest called for the survivors to shut themselves in even further. The entire scene was a time bomb. I could almost feel it about to explode into violence. There was a shrilling voice that cut through the air. "Something's coming in from the surface!" The entry ran into the room and the tunnel exits. The flock was silent. People who were on the brink of knocking each other out were now staring at each other for answers. "Invaders!" One of the leaders broke the silence. "No, Your Honor," the sentry said. "Something different. They mean no harm." "How can you be sure?" "There are other flocks with them." With that, there was a commotion from where the sentry came in. I pushed and shoved through the crowd until I could see what was happening. Members from other flocks entered the tunnel, looking at our pathetic little congregation with sympathetic eyes. Behind them came hulking beasts. Some little voice in my head told me that these were the invaders from the black ships. Panic gripped my heart. It wasn't until I realized that the rest of the flock was watching with amazement and not fear that I realized my mistake. These newcomers had to crouch and waddle under the tunnel entrance, though the top was twice my height. They were some kind of bipedal mammal, encased in thick exoskeletons that made them even more intimidating. Each one casually held a gun the size of a small artillery piece. The last one that came in didn't have a massive weapon or armor. "Who are you?" One of the leaders butted through the crowd and asked the newcomer with caution. "I am General Ayan Patel of the Interstellar Indian Republic, part of the coalition of mankind," the unarmed human said and stepped forward. He took a long, expressionless look at our squalid living conditions before turning to our leaders. "Perhaps you would like to go to the surface." The sun was a lot brighter than I thought it would be. After the rest of the flock went to bed, I'd spend hours staring at the pictures, imagining what it would be like to actually stand under it. I was disappointed to find out it actually hurt to look at it, though there was slight relief to see that the rest of the flock shielding the eyes as much as me. My eyes adjusted, revealing a valley of blackened with ash and dotted with deep blast craters. Black ships lay scattered across the land, splintered into smoldering wrecks. Monstrous shapes were strewn about the valley, so terrible that I couldn't even classify what kind of animal they were. It's not like I needed to. The flock's reaction told me all I needed to know. The general sensed our apprehension. "Don't worry, there shouldn't be any trouble to you anymore." Our leaders looked as shaken as the rest of us. "The invaders," one of them said. "What did they want? Why didn't they come here?" "Questions I wish I had answers to," the general shook his head. "I can only imagine what you people went through. But it's over now." "What do we do now?" I didn't realize I spoke until the words had already come out. "We're rebuilding the cities across the world, trying to reconnect people with missing loved ones and go back to the way things were. But I'm not sure the last one is possible. After you all gather your belongings and whoever stayed down in the caves, we can shuttle you to the nearest landing pad. From there, it's up to you where to head next. But we'll help you every step of the way." "What do you have to gain from helping us?" The general paused, staring at the ground in thought. finally he smirked. Nothing. We're just helping friends in need. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed.